Anyway, let's cover something else that's actually important. Pogroms going on in the internationally recognized as occupied West Bank. And a certain ethno-nationalist YouTuber had something to say about this. You guys might know of her. A certain ethno-nationalist YouTuber said, "People are mad that those condemning the attacks on Palestinians in the West Bank aren't mentioning the murders that inspired them. Bro, do you not think the murders were inspired by something too?" As if any of it is justification. The cycle just continues. And they frame it as like the cycle of hatred, the cycle of violence. It's just human and true. So I wanted to make a video about this ridiculous bullshit, because this isn't true. There's no cycle of violence in Israel and Palestine. What there is a settler colonial occupier and the victims of that occupation, the people who live under that occupation, the indigenous Palestinians being colonized by the settler colonial Israelis. It's that simple. And it's even more black and white because we're talking about the West Bank. The West Bank is recognized even by Israel's allies as being under an illegal Israeli occupation. It's internationally recognized as Palestinian. And this violence is happening in the occupied West Bank. Now, when you're a people living under occupation and there are implanted settlers defended by one of the world's most advanced and murderous militaries in the Israeli Defense Forces, when you fight back against that, it's not murder, okay? This is what an Israeli settler is. Israeli settlers, they come into internationally recognized Palestinian territory with guns, they are armed, and they work with the IDF, or they come in after the IDF has expelled Palestinians from their own land. They move into their houses, they move onto their land, they build new houses on Palestinian land. And then they try to take more and more and more and more. They try to get rid of the Palestinians. These are settler colonial occupying invaders. These are not like everyday civilians. You could make a claim that Israelis outside of the West Bank are civilians. You cannot make a claim that these fucking people are civilians. Give me a fucking break. This is an occupied population resisting against a settler, it's an occupied population resisting against a settler colonial occupation where the line between combatant and civilian is a fucking circle. What are you supposed to do? They move into your house, they steal your land, they ethnically cleanse you from it, and you're supposed to just fucking sit there and just let them do it? And just do non-violent resistance? Give me a fucking break. If Israeli settlers in the West Bank are getting killed by Palestinians, it's the same thing as Native Americans killing settlers on the frontier in 1850. It's defense. It's resistance. It's the same thing as a fucking Polish man retaking his house through force of arms from a German settler during World War II. And you frame this as a cycle of violence. There is no such thing as a cycle of violence. There's no cycle of violence in Israel. There is an aggressive settler colonial genocidal occupier, and there are its victims. There's the oppressed and there is the oppressor. There's no cycle of violence. It is a problem caused by the fact that Israelis came to Palestine even before the foundation of Israel with the intent to form a settler colonial ethno-state at the expense of Palestinians. The same logic that we see resulting in the pogroms going on today. None of that has fucking anything to do with a cycle of violence. It's not just, oh, you hit me, I hit you back. It's, I oppress you. You fight back in the limited means available to you, and I oppress you more. What these people advocate for is like some sort of kumbaya notion of peace, where just both sides decide to renounce violence and just leave things at where the lines of the status quo dictate. But there is no peace without justice. Where is the justice for Palestinians? This rhetoric enables Israeli settler colonialism. It frames it as little more than like a call and response thing, where one side does one bad thing and the other side does a bad thing in response. But what actually happens is that one side is an obviously overwhelmingly powerful settler colonial occupying invader, even by the standards of Israel's own allies in the West Bank. And the other is a population living under said settler colonial occupation, having their homes, their towns, their lives ripped apart every single day by the settler colonial occupiers and fighting back against that. This is not a cycle of violence. There is clearly one side that is in the wrong and one side that is in the right. It's that simple. Another thing about this is what's been happening in the West Bank recently is the result of a new Palestinian resistance group called the Lion's Den. You know, they're in Nablus in Palestine, in the Israeli-occupied West Bank, which has huge settler problems around it, by the way. So this new group, the Lion's Den, was basically formed by very young militants, teenagers, most of them, who have lived under the occupation their entire lives and just want to fight back against it. But they also recognize that, like, the Palestinian Authority is just a collaboration organization with Israel, so they decided to form their own militant group to resist the occupation. And Israel has been attacking the West Bank day in and day out in order to try and destroy the Lion's Den, because they see a huge threat in a new resistance group that is not tied to an organization that they control, being the Palestinian Authority, that is operating independently of them, and that aims to resist their illegal war crime settler colonial occupation. By the way, that's something I forgot to mention. All settlers in the West Bank are living, breathing war crimes. Their presence there is illegal under even liberal international law. They are implanted settlers. Every single one of them is a war crime. They are war criminals. It's that fucking simple. So this Lion's Den group is being responded to with the full force of the IDF, and that is what is causing this. It is a group resisting settler colonial invasion, and the IDF attacking them to try and destroy them because it recognizes how dangerous a group that they do not control, that is not just controlled opposition like the Palestinian Authority, like Fatah. They recognize the danger that poses their settler colonial occupation. So there's no cycle of violence. There is clearly a group of oppressed people that is being oppressed by a group of oppressor people. That is what this conflict is. Israelis versus Palestinians is not some age-old conflict that has been going on forever. It is a very recent conflict that has been spurred very recently, within the last 70, 80 years or so, because one group came in to colonize Palestine and get rid of the people who already live there for their own benefits. It's that simple. Not a cycle of violence whatsoever. It's like saying that, like, when French resistance fighters attacked like Nazi troops, and then the Nazis responded by like killing French resistance prisoners or something, that's just a cycle of violence. No. You have clear lines between right and wrong. We all fucking know what they are. Don't pretend you don't. But aristocracy here, everyone's least favorite settler colonialism advocate, everyone's least favorite ethno-nationalist, she has to frame it as if, just an ongoing conflict. No one knows why it's happening. Who knows? Who can tell? Certainly not something that's very fucking obvious to anyone with an ounce of empathy and anyone with an ounce of brain matter, who isn't just trying to justify ethno-nationalist Israeli colonization. There is no cycle of violence in Palestine. There is an oppressor oppressing an oppressed people. And the solution to this problem is to make the oppressor stop. And any resistance to that oppression is caused by the oppressor. That simple.